I think we're good to go. We're all set up. So, yeah, here we are. It's April of 2020. Bomb City. Bomb City. You and Jamie first approached me in January of 2013, I think it was.
Let's set the stage here. We're in quarantine with the rest of the U.S., and so this is an opportunity for everyone to catch up on watching some movies, hopefully, and maybe Bomb City will be a part of that.
You and Jamie, the director, are both from Amarillo, and we met at a Christmas party that Mark Colombo was having originally. And sometime in January of 2013, I believe it was, that's when you guys sent me the pitch deck that y'all had put together with some preliminary images and kind of, told me about the story, and we kind of connected then. So up until that point, maybe talk a little bit about your process before you guys hooked up with me.
So me and Jamie, we both grew up in Amarillo, which is where the story takes place. We knew that we wanted to make a full feature, and that we were looking forward to making a full feature. And just Brian's story kept coming up, in our minds and just in our hearts. That we knew that would be a story that we wanted to tell. If we felt like the message was important, and it was based in our hometown. So we, right before that in January, we got together and probably put a good 3 months into, writing some of the preliminary stuff, building out the screenplay as far as a skeleton, and just working through all that. And then from there, we started talking to you, and we started meeting with the real life people so we could, kind of fill in the gaps of the truth of the story and everyone's own personal experiences and whatnot. So, I mean, you can kind of speak to that as we went through the process of meeting Mike and Betty Dinicky and, Jason Dinicky, John King, Chris Oles, and just all the people that would talk to us. We opened the door to as many people as possible because we wanted to get as many different perspectives of the story as possible in order to fill the screenplay with as much truth. Obviously, it's a film, and there's, it's still a narrative feature, but we wanted to fill it with as much truth as we could, wrap our heads around. So, tell me a little bit about just meeting the real life people and, that process, Major, as we went through trying to get rights and tell the story.
Yeah, we always said all along that we had a punk angel, with this kind of guidance and opening doors and making things happen, fortuitously. Everything just kind of fell in place. And meeting Mike and Betty for me was pretty cool because, originally when you and Jamie approached me, and I think visually and cinematically, my brain immediately started thinking of, punk rockers and, dusty, wide open steer pastures and stuff like that. And just visually, I thought the dichotomy of the punk rockers in the middle of nothingness like Amarillo, I just thought that, that would be really, really pretty. And I started thinking, how, successful I thought a story like this could be. And, and then when I met Mike, it hit me. And it was no longer, just about, beautiful cinematography and a cool soundtrack. It was about, one dad connecting with another dad and, watching him talk about his son as if it happened yesterday. And here it was 17 years later. And that really struck a chord with me as a dad myself. And I just, to hear Mike, talk about it, and just, people move on and people get better and, time helps, but there's certain things in life, I think, that no amount of time gets you through fully. And so the minute Mike started talking about it, I could see that still behind his eyes, the pain and how it still, was affecting him all these years later. And for me, that just kind of sealed it. I've always, prided, myself of being a man of my word, and just sitting there that day and looking him in his eyes and saying, we're going to tell your son's story. And so
Jamie always tells that story the first time we met Mike and Betty, and that's probably the most nervous that I've ever been. I know he was super nervous, and it was it's a heavy burden to bear, to take. It's a burden for them to retell that story, and we didn't want to bring up anything like you said. It's there's a lot of it's never a resolved issue when you lose a child or a brother, and so I think we didn't want to like bring up something that takes, it takes a lot of toughness just to get through life in general.
Yeah.
With, when you lose someone, but to bring it all back up to the surface. But they were so receiving and so welcoming to us, and they kind of became family throughout.
Yeah, I mean, if we didn't have their support, we never would have told this story. I mean, that meeting was so crucial because that was like at the very beginning, at the early stages, and and as we went along, it was great to get Mike and Betty in our corner from the beginning.
Yeah,
and that gave us a little leeway with other people, but it was a work in progress. We had to individually, we had to win more than just them over. I mean, we had to win Jason over and let him know, convince him that we were going to, be sensitive to his brother's story and do it justice. And
yeah,
same thing with John King and Chris Oles, and just, how that all kind of fell.
So many people that lived through it held that story so close. It was such a big part of their, their childhood and their growing up, and rightfully so. It's hard for us as strangers, even though Jamie and I were both from Amarillo, we came with an open heart, and they knew we wanted to tell the story for the right reasons, but it's still just, it's hard to open up to strangers and say, okay, these guys we're going to let them run with our story. And we were very blessed that they did, they are who they are. And, the rest is kind of history here. So let's move forward past the early development, and let's get into a little bit of the, the indie film world. And, what was like for you, what was, the biggest challenge of just pre-pro? And we both produced together and we worked through a lot of things. And it was our first time, each of us, and neither one of us were, had produced a feature film before. So just talk a little bit about your process and what went into it for you growing as a producer and learning, on the job.
Yeah. Well, I mean, once, all the money was secured, it was really, for me, it was me and you locking ourselves in that big space that we found, our pre-production office, and those 6 or 8 weeks where we were in one room. I feel like you accomplish so much more when you're in a room, in the same room with your team, and it's kind of like all hands on deck. Just having that space, having the money in the bank and having that space, it just made everything so real. It was like showing up every day. Because, as freelancers, as artists, 99% of the time we're working from home. And it's easy to get distracted at home. I mean, the mailman comes, the dog needs to go out, your kid is yelling for you to play or whatever. And, we were able to accomplish so much just getting in that room.
Well, I will say that, up to that point, we had probably worked on the film for, 3 years going into that point. Yeah. So we had carried that story with us for so long. And when we started bringing actors in, and, the AD, the cinematographer, and all those people, their belief in the story and their belief in telling the story, it really kind of reinvigorated our energy that we had in the beginning. I think once we started building out a team of artists, and just their excitement, kind of refueled our passion for telling the story. And that's so important. All right, so let's see what else.
Maybe we'll talk a little bit too about. I'll talk a little bit now about kind of the path that the film took. So, we wrapped principal photography in June of 2016, and the deadline for Sundance. Well, technically it was August because we had to pick up some more things around August, like some pickup shots. So really, August, and the deadline for Sundance was October, I believe it was.
Yeah, it was super tight.
Super tight turnaround. And so we actually submitted this film to Sundance. It was 2 hours and 28 minutes.
It was long.
Yeah, it was 2 hours and 28 minutes. And the movie that you guys just finished watching is 1 hour and 35 minutes. So if that tells you anything about the editing process. As a producer, it's really difficult to edit scenes if you only think about what went into making those scenes happen, how much they cost, the strings you had to pull to get that location.
Actors that you casted to play roles that don't even end up.
We had one character, the Stanley Marsh character, completely cut out of the film. But in the end, you have to do what serves the story. It's not about what actor you hired for that scene or how much you spent on it. Ultimately, does it help the story? And this whole other storyline with the Stanley Marsh character, it completely changed the tone, because the film overall that y'all just watched, has a dark and ominous tone. But we had these other scenes. They just kind of felt like they were from from another movie, don't you think?
Yeah, it was just, it didn't flow as well. I think, when everything's laid out, and Jamie's such a good editor that, the screenplay was the screenplay. And the other thing is we're telling someone a real life story. So you don't want to leave things out. And there's so many important aspects that are true in someone's life. And so when you're writing, you're just writing so much because there is so much, and then once you start to see it, it's weird to tell a true story because you want to give justice to the real person. But, at the end of the day, it's a film, and it has to be compacted and needs to be as tight as possible. So we did our best to include nuances of, Brian as a person, and hopefully, and there's a lot of things in the film that I think you wouldn't even know, but are actually shout outs to Brian. There's the kid that he meets at the punk show that has the mailman hat. That's a shout out to Brian as a kid. He used to wear a hat and everybody called him the mailman kid. And I think, Shelley, one of Brian's friends, gave us the, don't tell me what to do, I'm an anarchist, and all those things, those little things, hopefully that comes through, especially for the people who really knew him, which is, to me was always going to be our toughest audience, was the people that knew him, because it's never going to be Brian and it's never going to be the truth. But hopefully that we build a little bit of the essence and a little bit of the, the belief of, Brian himself. And hopefully that comes through in the screenplay and then ultimately in the final film, which is why we had to drop some things that, didn't flow as smoothly.
Yeah. Yeah.
So talk a little bit about, you were the casting director as well. We wear many hats when you're in indie film. We call it WIT, whatever it takes. But tell me a little bit about casting, and tell me about casting Dave as Brian Deneke.
Jamie hates when I tell this story, but I mean, ultimately we did it backwards because, typically when you're casting a film, you cast your lead actor and you kind of build your cast around who you've cast as your lead. And in this story, Brian was actually the last person that we cast, the last of the punks. I think he was the last main character. But I found Dave originally through Isaiah Laborde, who was Jack Hamilton in the film and who did a lot of our stunt choreography and kind of was a consulting producer as well. But Isaiah and Dave know each other from back in New Orleans. And I got Dave's audition tape and I immediately thought, this is the kid. And, of course, sent the video to Jamie.
Tell us Dave's audition tape. Dave's audition tape was awesome.
Yeah. Dave's audition tape was great because he actually, he kind of thought outside the box. He went so the role of Brian was such a difficult role to cast because, number one, you had to have somebody that looked like him enough to play him. Number two, you had to have an actor that could actually skateboard because we weren't going to cheat that because it's a low budget film, no stunt double, no, you know what I mean? We wanted to have that in film. So we had to have an actor that looked like him, an actor that could skateboard, an actor that could act, and an actor willing to take a mohawk. Because let's be honest, you go and do a punk film and you have a mohawk, there's not too many roles once you wrap that film that you're going to be able to get immediately until you grow your hair back out.
Although Nugget, you can see Dave in the Logan trailer with that same mohawk, which he went to right after, which I thought was.
He had to dye it bleach blonde. Yeah. Dave played right after Bomb City, he played the convenience store clerk in Logan.
So how was his audition tape?
He almost lost the job. He said he almost lost it, but
because of the hair.
Because of the hair, but
he
convinced them that the convenience store clerk could have a blonde mohawk.
So finish up. Yeah, finish his.
So Dave went out. Dave was in LA and he went out to a skate park, and he started off his audition tape by skateboarding, and hopped right up and gave like this awesome laugh that.
Yeah.
Later became one of Brian's laughs. And he started his audition that way. He wasn't in a room, he just fit the part. He put himself, he said he put toothpaste because he got his hair to, he didn't have a mohawk yet, but he got it to stand straight up. And I later asked him, I was like, how'd you get your hair what'd you use? And he said he put toothpaste in his hair. So that's how he had a mohawk for the audition.
Yeah, it was a good audition. I always liked Dave, and I think for when you say he was the last person to cast, I don't think we were never going to find the perfect fit. And for us, it was just we held Brian in such high esteem. I don't know that we were ever going to be like, wow, this is the perfect, everything. And once Dave came to the production office and we met with him, and once he got the mohawk too, it kind of changed his complete personality, and he just did such a great job. And like by the time the entire process of filming the movie was done, he had become so close with Brian's family and Brian's friends. And there's a picture of him hugging Betty Denicky, which was on our martini shot, which is the last shot we shot in Amarillo at the Cadillac Ranch. And, there's a picture of him hugging Betty. And I think that explains so much of not only how Dave was able to capture Brian's spirit a little bit, but how, Dave was able to open up, and get the people around that, that loved Brian to actually welcome him in. And he brought a lot of things that even us as writers weren't able to bring to the screenplay. He brought more nuance, which I think everyone that we worked with on the film did, as far as everybody cared so much about the story. It made the movie so much better because everybody just left it all out there. And indie film is tough, and there's not enough money, and there's never enough time. But if you can
your story is your biggest asset.
Yeah,
it's your biggest tool. Because whether you're trying to attract the right investors or you're trying to attract the best of the talent pool, people want to work on good material. Actors want to act.
Yeah.
And if you don't have a lot of money, that's okay if you have a good story, because there's so much stuff out there actors are working on just to keep the lights on, that when something comes across that speaks to them, and it's a story with a message behind it, and a story that has substance. And, this story from the beginning, we always said, we didn't have to have a movie star in this movie because the story itself was a star. Brian was this larger than life character, and this movie is about his legacy, and so I think that's why we did get the kind of talent that we have in the film, because actors, you can only do so many movies where you try to save the planet from big green ogres. We want character driven, we want meat.
It's personal. The story became personal for everybody on set and everybody involved, and I think that's hopefully that plays through to the audience and they can feel that.
Yeah, and you kind of just touched on that a little bit too. It wasn't just the actors, but it carried over to everybody. Everyone from from our wonderful DP Jake to our hairstylist Liz to our fight coordinators to every single person brought their A game because the story mattered to them, because everyone viewed
it wasn't about money or it wasn't about any of those things. It was about telling the story to the best.
A terrible injustice.
We were blessed with the opportunity. The Denickys blessed us with their blessing to tell the story. The investors came on board because they believed the story needed to be told. We bootstrapped it from the beginning, all for the same reasons. As we, as more people came on board, I think everybody did it for the same reasons that we started to do it. And that was, that's Brian. That's the power of the story itself. And you're right.
Yeah.
So hopefully we did it justice, and hopefully, people can get the heart of the story from watching, the film.
Yeah.
So what was you were an actor, a dirty cop, which we can all see it. So tell me, what was your favorite, scene to act in? And
my favorite scene to act in the film is probably the police raid, just because, with my wrestling background and MMA background and getting to work alongside Robbie Lawler.
Yeah, that was super cool.
Getting to work with him and, bring him in. It's funny, the way I got Robbie to do the film, so one of our executive producers, Steve Silver, who's in the Wrestling Hall of Fame, I was with him. We were at the NCAAs in Madison Square Garden. And, Steve was the Olympic team leader in 2008, and he walked in with Robbie, and immediately my wheels started spinning. This was in March. And so, we'd cast some roles already, but not like the smaller parts. And I just looked up at Robbie and I was like, what are you doing in May? And he's like, I was like, you got another fight lined up? And he's like, not yet. I don't know. I was like, you want to come to Dallas and do a movie?
Yeah, that's cool.
And we immediately swapped numbers, but we're
glad to have Jamie's a big MMA fan too. Yeah. And I'm a big MMA fan, and it was just cool to have him on. And Dom was a huge MMA fan, and he got puffed up by Robbie Lawler in the scene, and that was fun for him. I think that might have been his favorite.
Sounds great. Yeah, Dom was here. So when we were filming the movie, I had Dave, May, Dom, Isaiah, and Rachel all staying at my house. We called
Yeah.
it Hotel Dodge, and Dom was hilarious. We had wrestling matches in our living room one night.
Yeah, everybody's awesome. I miss everybody. It's been so long.
Oh man, I miss them all too, man. It's crazy because like more than any other film or any other project I've ever worked on, everyone that worked on Bomb City to this day still feels like family. Like any actor, anybody was
it's like a summer camp. It was like a summer camp.
Like I just worked with Jake, our DP. I just worked with Jake, 3 weeks ago or probably a month ago at this point, right? Like the week before quarantine, I worked with Jake on a Mercedes commercial, and just the fact I'm walking on set to work with Jake, and immediately we saw each other. It was just like this big hug and like just smiling.
Yeah.
And it's just like this crazy bond and connection. You make a movie, any movie you work on together, and you work on it every day for a month, creating something, something so big like a film, you walk away, feeling like family, but nothing like this, man. It's just, I can't put my finger on it.
We're going to have a reunion and get everybody back together.
No, right?
We came away with a lot of lifelong friendships, and I think that, it was fun. So I do miss it. That was a crazy time.
So let me ask you, so going back to when we were filming the movie, what was the craziest day on set for you?
Craziest day on set. Well, there's a couple of moments, right? There's whenever the football field got pulled from us a couple days before, that was crazy. And those are more producing moments. The craziest day on set for me was really just filming the scene, the death scene, and just the gravity of the moment of that scene and recreating all that stuff.
You got a little Zoom notification.
Yeah, I got a notification. No, it's just the gravity of filming that moment was pretty heavy, and it was important. You know what I mean? As far as like the whole movie had built up to that point, and we were also, tired. We had run 20 straight days, and like you're talking nonstop. And when you produce, when you produce and you shoot overnights, you don't get much sleep because business runs at 8 a.m., but all the filming happens overnight. So as soon as you're ready to go to bed at 8 a.m., all the business starts going. So that was
oh my gosh. Well, if when people watch the film, they see how many scenes took place at night.
Yeah.
We had of the 22 days we filmed in Dallas, 13 of those 22 days were overnight shoots.
Yeah, that was
literally. We'd be coming home when the sun was coming up, and then we'd have to turn around, get about 3 hours of sleep. Coming home, you just feel like a vampire. I remember driving back to my house with like Isaiah, and when you're producing, you're one of the last on a low budget. You're one of the last people.
First to show, last to go.
First to show up, last to leave, just like the location manager. Which we both were that as well. So yeah, let's talk about that actually. So all the hats we wore. So Sheldon, you co-wrote the script with Jamie.
Yeah.
You produced it with me. You scored it with your brother Cody.
Yeah.
And
just all the little, everything else was booking, whatever. Yeah.
I cast it. I produced it. I acted in it, and I raised all the money.
Yeah. And Jamie co-wrote it. He directed it, and he edited it. So it was a fun process, and it was a long process. So
yeah, man, we left that. We were already brothers before we made this movie, but you leave that feeling like just y'all are my bros, man.
Yeah, for sure. It was
great experience.
Better do it again.
So one of the things I just mentioned was that you scored it with your brother Cody, and since this is a Sumerian event,
let's talk a little bit about the music. Shout out to Sumerian. I'm pretty old school metal fan myself, so I love like Animals as Leaders before, and whenever Ash had reached out to us with the opportunity to maybe work something with Bomb City and his movie American Satan, of course for me, I already knew who Sumerian was, and I was immediately like, oh, awesome. And then when they decided to take the score and, host it on their label, and they, put give me a de facto album on Sumerian. It's not a metal album like, like my old school days, but
maybe one day. I know I
yeah,
actually couldn't hear this. So.
but it was pretty awesome personally for me, just to be assimilated with their, a brand I had already knew and music I had loved. So to have our music hosted on their, site, and for them to be the ones taking the reins, that was awesome personally. And I know Cody feels the same. So we just, the music process it's different. I come from a metal type music background, and just over my life, just making music, I transferred into kind of scoring just as I became a filmmaker. It just kind of came what we did, and we're afforded the opportunity to tell this story and to make the music for it. So it was pretty awesome. Personally, that was my roots come from music. So that's always where my heart's been. It's kind of like you in acting, where you're not going to produce a movie and not act in it. So I'm not going to put this whole thing together and not at least take a stab at the music. So hopefully we did it justice. And it's a punk film, so we didn't write all the punk music. There's some awesome punk bands, if you want to go check them out, that contributed their music, which all those bands contributed their music for free, which was unbelievable. And everybody was so cool as we told this story. So there's just so many stories. We could talk for hours about how awesome just everybody was throughout the process.
So we got the Blanks, Total Chaos,
7-7, Total Chaos, Blatz, Subhumans, man.
CD, Filth, hello.
I mean, shout out to CJ Ramon, who helped us out, releasing the film. There was a lot of cool things that, felt a little like out of this world that we could have never built with our own personal relationships. But Brian's story had already touched some of these people. They already knew about it. And it was just a story that, everybody wanted to help. So we keep saying that because that's really the only reason why Bomb City is where it is now, is because so many people jumped on and helped us carry it over the finish line, I think.
Including Marilyn Manson.
Manson, shout out to him for letting us include him in it. So.
Thank you so much, Marilyn Manson. So, I mean, that, again, that's all because of the story. Everyone believed in Brian's story, that speech that Manson.
It's the same reason we started on it in the first place, man.
That speech that Manson gave is actually a real speech. It's from a Unity and Diversity conference, the Disinfo conference.
Yeah, you can look that up
2001, a couple years after the verdict was read. And so, the story went so far and wide and touched so many people. And, if it wasn't for the impact of the story and, our punk angel, a lot of these things probably wouldn't happen. Since we are talking on the music, should probably give a shout out to Young Zillion, Rodney Brown.
Oh, yeah, those guys.
One of my best friends from high school who contributed all the hip hop music, which is what the jocks play in the film as well. So shout out to him.
That was very important for the dichotomy of the film and the balance. So, and the music's cool too, and it drops. So it gave us some cool opportunities to do some cool edits with the way that music drops.
Absolutely. Well, my craziest day on set would have to be on the way to Fort Worth to shoot this.
I almost mentioned that because that was one of my crazy days.
Yeah. So here I am driving. So since, we're making this film on a low budget, I was also, you and I were also transportation department. So we had to get these cars from 1997, these picture cars from one location to another. So we were shooting most of the movie in Dallas. And if anyone knows the geography around here, Fort Worth is like another 40 minutes north of Dallas. And so I was in a 1974 Cadillac that had no air conditioning and no cell phone charger. And so my cell phone had died. And the car broke down on the highway and had a flat tire. And there was no spare in the car. So here I was, couldn't let anybody know where I was. I was in a picture car and was broken down the side of the highway.
That car would needed to be on set. There's a reason why you were driving it. We were supposed to film it that day.
And on top of all that, it was probably like 90 degrees out.
Oh. Yeah. The rain that day, that was a weird day.
All the cars broke down.
Yeah, that was a weird day.
The Cadillac that we T-boned broke down.
Yeah.
The truck broke down, and then Cody Cates' Cadillac broke down. They all kept breaking down. It was either
what happens when you shoot a movie that's 15 years, 20 years past the story. So
that's what happens when you're using cars that cost about $1,500 new
Yeah.
or used when you bought them. So
Yeah.
can't expect much.
No.
Yeah. What else? I think we're probably
Yeah, we should probably wrap it up. So
wrapping it up. What's
anyways, shout out to everybody who, you know, are checking out Bump City and have watched it. And, you know, after you watch the movie, you know, look up the story. You know, the truth is more riveting than even the movie itself. So, you know, I encourage everyone to go read about it, and, you know, don't judge a book by its cover. So
Absolutely. And yeah, if you saw this film and were touched by it, definitely tell people, because right now, while we're in quarantine, people are consuming. Lots of people are watching movies, and although it's a blessing to have been listed on Looper's, Apple News and Looper's top 10 most underrated film in the past decade, at the same time, we'd like to change that. So if you were touched by this film, please recommend it to a friend.
All we have is word of mouth. So
that's it. Thanks for watching.
Cool. All right. Later.